Hello and welcome to the Adobe channel. My name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe, and it's my pleasure to stream live to you here today for the next couple of hours. We're going to be doing this in two parts. Part one will be about the latest updates to many of Adobe's mobile apps, and then we're going to do part two in an hour, 8 a.m. or I guess that'd be 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. my time, Eastern time, on Intro to Lightroom CC Part 4. We're going to start into the Develop module. So, guys, welcome to the stream. If you're watching the video on demand or the replay, whether it's the video on demand on Twitch or the replay on my YouTube channel, know that this is a live show that happens every Tuesday and Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time till noon Eastern Time. And like I said, I've been breaking this up into two parts. So part one, random topics each day or each time, and part two is usually a learning stream. So I completed a 10-part learning stream on Photoshop, and now we're doing an 8-part learning stream on Lightroom, and we're at part 4 already. So we're almost halfway through. That'll happen in about an hour. Now, also because this is live, I'll be addressing the audience that's here live. So I'll see people like Echo Sith in the chat and say hello. And TrippyTube2, hi there, and Erica and Victoria and other people I've already greeted, and Jan, Eric is in the house. And so you'll see me from time to time not only give shout outs, but more importantly, answer questions that I see in the chat. Now, first and foremost, the Adobe mobile apps are all free to download and use. All of them, of course, are on iOS. Many of them are on Android, and more are coming to Android each day. And I will, whenever there's a distinction of one that's on one or the other, I will go ahead and make that distinction. One of the other things I want to point out, and I will try to remember to do it regularly throughout the stream, is that the Adobe channel, the one you're watching right now, is almost at 50,000 followers. So if you came in today, it's your first day here, you're a guest, do me a favor. I want to hit that 50,000 mark within the next 2 hours. I want to take credit for driving the channel over the 50K mark. So if you're not already following the channel, head over to twitch.tv/adobe/profile and click the follow button and follow the Adobe channel. We're almost at the 50K mark. We were like, before I started the stream, we were like 28 short. So if we can hit that 28 mark or 50,000 mark within the next 2 hours, you'll make me a happy guy. All right, so with that said, let me go ahead and turn off my notifications here. And they're off on my phone. Good. And so the way this is going to work, I'm going to show you some mobile apps on my iPad Pro. I'm going to show you some mobile apps on my iPhone. And there's no rhyme or reason as to why I would show you one versus the other, because the ones I'm going to show you are on both. They're on both iPhone and iPad. It's just whenever I'm going to show you something on the iPhone, it's probably because I'm going to take a picture with the camera. In other words, I could hold up my iPad and take a picture, but I just try not to do that because it looks and feels weird. But there's nothing wrong with that. It does work with the camera on the iPad as well. But in most cases, I will use the iPhone for capture and the iPad for actual creation and work. Bigger screen, bigger surface. If it's an iPad Pro, of course, you can take advantage of the Apple Pencil. So those are the rhymes or reasons for using one or the other. But like I said, every app I'm going to show you, except one, is on both. I just realized there's one that's not on the iPad yet, but coming soon. All right. So with that said, thanks guys for joining me here live. And I just saw a couple people host the channel, so thank you for hosting the channel on your Twitch channel. That's always fun to do. I just did it on my channel. I sometimes forget. And let's start off with, let me look here. I'm going to start off with Photoshop Fix, because it's one of my favorite apps. I think it's kind of cool the way it works. And then we'll do some comp And then we'll do some capture. I'm just thinking of things I'm going to do. And then we'll maybe do some Adobe Post, and then we'll see what we have time for after that. So let's start off with Adobe Photoshop Fix. Now this is one of those where, remember I told you I'd tell you if it's on both or if it's on one or the other. Photoshop Fix is iOS only at this point. It's a retouching app. It's free to download, free to use, and it is available on iOS, iPad, iPhone only. But if it is, if it's one on Android, I will say that it's on both. All right, so let me switch gears so you guys can actually see my screen. All right, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do it one more way so you can kind of see both. Let's go ahead and do that as well. And that way you can see my iPad as I bring it over. There it is, the iPad Pro. And you should now be able to see my screen. Now there will be a slight lag in the connection to the computer to show you what I'm doing. It's not as quick as me doing it live on the iPad. So I'm going to show you a little bit of both screens. All right, so I've got my Apple Pencil. Somehow I've misplaced my cap today. It's somewhere over here on my messy desk. But there is a cap that goes on the top of that. Luckily, we don't need it to do anything today. All right, let's see, what else? I'm just looking at the chat here to make sure we're not missing anything important. You saw a spoof of the iPad selfie phenomenon with a girl taking a mirror selfie with her 27-inch iMac. That is hilarious. Yeah, holding up this big 13-inch, 12-inch iPad Pro, not going to be doing that a lot to take pictures. Even when it was a 9.7-inch, I didn't hold it up a lot to take pictures. Maybe once or twice just to see if it worked. But yeah, if I'm going to shoot or capture something, I tend to want to do it with the phone because it's in my pocket, number one. And number two, it's just easier to take pictures with or capture things. Okay, so I've got my Adobe folder here open, and see, there's the lag that I was talking about. See that lag on screen? That's the lag between the connection for some reason I've got today. But let's go ahead and open up the Adobe folder. And when I open up the Adobe folder, I'm going to go ahead and launch Photoshop Fix. Now, I use Photoshop Fix for retouching and retouching. Pretty much that's it. I use it for making adjustments to images. Now, there's one image I'm already seeing here that I showed this, I think last week sometime. I did a quick Facebook Live, and I showed this on my Facebook fan page. I showed people this particular technique. So I'm going to go ahead and show it here as well, because I don't think I showed this on Twitch. So let me go ahead and fire up this image. And now that I got this image open, as you can see with this stock photo we've got here, hey JRF88, good morning. And hey Flo, how's it going? So we've got this stock image open, and you can see one of his eyes is either more open than the other or bigger than the other. And this is nothing against him, nothing wrong with that. We all have parts that are, if you have two things, there may be one that's bigger than the other. And I'm just going to leave that to your imagination. So in this case, he's got one eye that's either slightly more open than the other, or one eye that's just a little bit bigger than the other. And we're going to pretend, because we don't know this guy, he's a stock photography or stock photo. We're going to pretend he said, hey, can you even out my eyes so that one doesn't look so much bigger than the other? And we can do that. We can actually go in and do that. But before we do that, I also noticed he's got a problem that I often have, and that is just not shaving the mustache just quite clean enough. So one of the things that's kind of cool is, and since we're talking about new things in Photoshop Fix and these apps today, you notice up at the top, next to the share icon, there's a little circle with an eye on it now. And hey, Star Crunch, what's going on? If I tap that little eye, that lets me now know either A, when the photo was taken, or in this case, edited, and it's now giving me the resolution. And so that's one of the new features in Photoshop Fix, is not only being able to do this display, but also one of the new features is kind of under the hood, and that is when it's bringing over images from Lightroom, it will honor whatever size it brings over. In other words, it won't downsize it or resample it or or make it smaller than it originally was. So it will maintain the original quality of the photo as it's bringing it over, whatever resolution it was. Now I believe, and this number keeps rising and keeps changing, I think we support 40 megapixel images or 50 megapixel images, somewhere in between, at least a 40 megapixel image. I'm going to go with that. So Photoshop Fix can handle large file sizes. And now there's no sacrifice in quality when you're coming off Lightroom Mobile. All right, so I've got the image open. I'm going to go ahead and pinch and zoom. And this is the other thing I like about it, is that I can get in really close and see some really good detail as I'm working with this. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into the healing brush at the bottom there. And as you can see on the left-hand side here, I've got the ability to dial up or dial down the size of my brush, which is kind of cool. And of course, I can also dial up or down the hardness of the brush, or the softness in this case. I'm going to drop the softness down. And then we've got, it looks like a mask overlay, maybe. Yeah, it'll show you as a mask where you did it. So I have never turned that on before, so it's new to me. So anyway, if I really wanted to get in and shave him, I could go in and literally hair by hair, I could go in and just digitally get the little hairs that have grown out since his last shave or that he missed. And in my case, it's usually a little bit of both. I miss some and then some grow out. And this is kind of work you do want to zoom in on, because the smaller the area you work, the better the result will be. If you try and work in too big of an area, where it's picking up from may not blend as smoothly. So you tend to want to work, more zoomed in with a smaller brush to make it look more realistic, especially when you zoom out. Because depending on the pixels it has to pick up from, it will maybe not smooth, or it may smudge the image and may not be as smooth. So you may lose some detail if you're not working small enough or carefully enough. So if I zoom back out, then that looks okay, but zoomed in, it's starting to smudge that a little bit. So in that case, what I might do is this. So I'll do a bigger area. In this case, let's say I just want to do all of this, and it's going to make a mess. That's okay. When I let go, I'm going to let it make that mess, and it made the mess, but it remembers the selection. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and click the patch tool, and it remembers what I just did. So now I can go ahead and drag that patch over to a matching skin tone and patch it better or more evenly than the healing brush was doing. So that patch tool works just like the patch tool in Photoshop, but you make your selection with the actual healing brush. I know it feels kind of weird, but that's a hidden tip for how the patch tool works. So same thing, if I were to come over here and I were to patch a bigger area, let's say I want to get all of this. And then if I let go, it does. If I don't like it, then I can go ahead and say, well, let's use the patch instead, and then drag that up a little bit and use the patch to get the exact skin tone that I was trying to pull from. So I saw a question, are you on source or destination? In Photoshop Fix, there is no source or destination that I'm aware of or what you're asking for. And the question was, can you get this image to work on with me? You could. It is in Adobe stock. I just don't remember the name of it for you to even search for. So I think Victoria might know the name of this image. I think she was doing an extensive search for eyes that were disproportional, so she might know how the name of this image or what to search for to find it, or the actual file number if she sees it in her library. All right, but anyway, that is kind of what we do with Photoshop Fix from a retouching standpoint. I still haven't gotten to the eye. I haven't forgotten, but I just wanted to show you some of the cleanup that I might do along the way, And again, if I don't like the skin tone, don't like the way that's working because it may be blending it in a non realistic way, then I can go ahead and do that, grab the patch tool, and then patch it to a better area to blend it in more. So you are patching. So now I remember now the question about source or destination. There is no choice. You're patching the source with your destination, if that makes sense. Oops, I didn't mean to do that twice. Let me undo that. Patch. Oh, too late. So now I have to do that again. And then patch. And then pull that over. Okay. I'm not going to clean up every little hair on his mustache, but I just wanted to show you we could digitally shave him if we wanted to. Now, any other bumps or blemishes or just spots, we can, of course, continue to heal those out and make this look the way we want it to look. All right, so, and by the way, that's one thing I do want to point out is that in Photoshop Fix, the tools, if you are using an Apple Pencil on an iPad Pro, the tools are pressure sensitive. So if I do a lighter stroke versus a heavier stroke, hang on, let's see here. I should be able to see a difference with the pressure sensitivity. Okay, light stroke, heavier stroke, even though it's not doing it for me right now. This tool should be pressure sensitive. Let me crank up the size. All right, it's making a liar out of me on this tool, but the rest of the tools should be pressure sensitive. So is this one. I'm not sure why it's not being right now. And what I mean by pressure sensitive is usually pressure sensitive in the healing brush will control the size as well as the amount of pressure you're applying. For whatever reason, it's not doing that with me right now. Like I'm just pressing down lightly, so that should be a smaller stroke. When I press down heavier, that should be a bigger stroke. But for some reason, it's not honoring that pressure sensitivity in this update. I'll have to go back to the Fix team and see if that's something that got broken. Because I've done this before where it was absolutely pressure sensitive. I've shown it here on Twitch before where it's pressure sensitive. All right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and deal with the eye. So we have the one eye that's a little bit bigger. Yeah, Friday the 13th spookiness. I know, we got the one eye that's a little bit bigger than the other eye, and it's the eye on this side, this side right here, that side, that eye. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say, okay, I'm done with healing for now. And once I'm done with healing, you'll notice that, and this is kind of a little hidden thing. Well, not hidden, but you may not have noticed it, is that you notice under the word healing down at the bottom, it put like this little blue line. And this is kind of like a checkbox that says, okay, you've done some healing on this image. So if you were trying to go from left to right in a workflow and you wanted to make sure you didn't miss any part of the workflow, anytime you see that little blue line under one of those options, that means you've used that option. Doesn't mean you might have used it for a second, you might have used it for an hour. It doesn't say how much you've used it, but I know I've done some healing on this image. So now I'll go to Liquify. And Liquify in Photoshop Fix has face detection. So it will detect that there's a face there. And notice how it put those little white circles on his eyes, on his cheekbones, on his lips, and on his chin. And that means that any one of those is now adjustable. So for example, I don't need to adjust his chin, but let's say I wanted to play with his chin. I can now change the width, the jawline, or the chin itself. By the way, here's another hidden feature is that you can actually pick up the point in most cases. This is like just not doing the things it normally does for me. In most cases, you can pick up the point and move them around. But in this case, I'm not going to do it on that. So I can move his chin up or down. We can make that, that's kind of freaky. That is a Freaky Friday the 13th kind of thing. So we can make his chin a little more, I don't know, slimmer or taller. I don't know what I would call that. And of course, we can control the width. And that's kind of cool too. I need that a lot on my images. I'll be doing that on my own selfies from now on. All right, and face distortion. But anyway, we were messing with the eye, so again, if I don't want any of that, I can undo it and undo it, and we have multiple undos and go back to the beginning. Now, let's go to the eye. And actually, one more. There we go. And on the eye, now here's the problem, is that wow, can you do this with the regular liquify in Photoshop? The regular liquify in Photoshop, as of right now, does not have face detection. You can do it all manually, but it doesn't detect the face and let you do all that automatically at this point. All right, so here's the problem with the two circles. Notice there's one over each eye. If I make an adjustment, it's going to adjust both eyes at the same time. Now, let me try my little tip here. All right, so my tip is working on the eye. If I'm using my finger, as you can see, I'm just pulling around that one eye, that does work individually. And that was what I was trying to do on the chin, so maybe it just doesn't work on the chin. But anyway, you can, as a little Easter egg or a little hidden feature, you can, Adobe work on that, okay. I promise we will. You can go ahead and pick up the point itself and move it around. So that's not using the control handles. That's just picking up the point and moving it around. Now, I want to go ahead and work on the control handle. So I'm going to go to this eye. And on this one, I'm going to do a couple things. First of all, I'm going to work with the height and bring the height down. But see, it's doing it to both eyes. That's the problem. So don't worry about what it's doing to the good eye. Concentrate your effort on the eye you want to make better. So in this case, I'm just focused on the eye on my left and his right eye. So now I can go in. I could also change the size. So if I pull the size down a little bit, I can go all the way down or make him bug out. But I can pull down the size of his eye. Now again, I'm not so much concerned about the other eye. I know the other eye is getting messed up, but I just want to get this eye looking right. I'll show you how to fix the other eye in a minute. All right, so it might have been a little too small. But anyway, once you get the first one looking the way you want, the one you're trying to fix, so we made it a little smaller, now we can say okay, or actually no, we're not going to say okay yet. You notice at the bottom there is a reconstruct button. So when I tap the reconstruct button, what that allows me to do is think of reconstruct as the same as the history brush in Photoshop. It lets me do undo on a brush. So I can just paint over the other eye and undo it, kind of bring back up the other eye. So I can make that other eye back to its original size. So if I undo, that was before, and that's after, just a little bit, just a slight touch with that brush, and that undid the liquify of the other eye that we didn't want to do. So now, it's still, the other one's still slightly bigger, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was. If you want to see how bad it was, that's how bad it was. That's the before, and that's the after. Before, after. Before, after. So on the before, I could even make this a little bit bigger. All right, so let's do a little bit more. Before, after. So now it looks like we just really did most of the work on his right eye. This is the before, that's what we started with. This is the after, making them a little bit more proportional. One iris is huge now. Let's see. Well, his iris was always huge. So this is the before. That's the size it was. So I didn't change his iris. It was already huge. That's just the way it was originally. So if I wanted to get in and change his iris, then I'd have to go in and do that manually. But that's the size of his iris. That's the way it was. So here's before I touched his eyes. That's the way they looked anyway. All right. Okay, so now we'll click OK. And so now there'll be, if I click OK, yep, now there will be, now there isn't. What did I do? Well, there should be the blue line now under liquefy and healing. Now the blue line's gone. Let's see, let's go back. Redo. Okay, not sure what's going on, but there would normally be a blue line under both. Okay, so we did liquefy, we did healing, And in this case, that is pretty much what this particular photo, what I brought it into Fix was for, is for the eye. I'm going to go out of this one. I'm going to go ahead and grab one more. So if I want to bring in a new photo, I can tap the plus sign on the left-hand side. This will give me access to my on the device photos, or I can go to Lightroom and I can grab from my Lightroom collections. So for example, there's a demo retouching one right here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one in. And in this case, there's a few things that I would adjust on this one. First and foremost, looking at the workflow from left to right. Could I move the camera to the side? It's blocking the bottom. I can try that. Well, tell you what, I'd have to, let's just get rid of that other camera for a second. There we go. All right, so the other camera's now out of the picture. All right, so now I've got this this portrait open. So first and foremost, the thing I don't like about it is I don't like the edges on the left and the right. It just slanted in like that, so I'm going to go ahead and crop it. So I can grab my crop tool. I can just pull in the crop to just get rid of those left and right edges that I don't want. So kind of recomposing this a little bit, removing those edges. Now, of course, with the crop, I've got freeform, which is what I'm doing. I'm not constrained to a specific aspect ratio. I can go ahead and switch it to an aspect ratio, and it will keep it square or 5x4, 4x3, 7x5, 3x2, or 16x9. But I'm going to go ahead and leave it on free. You can also flip the image, which is kind of nice. So if you want the image to look the other way or upside down, you can do that. And you can also rotate the image. So let's go ahead and click OK. And notice the blue line under the word crop, the way it's supposed to be. So, or you probably can't see it. Let me move it over. When you're doing these things, there should be that blue line under the things you've done to let you know you've done them. Okay, so there it is. There's the blue line under the word crop. All right, so then the next one in the workflow might be adjust. And under adjust, you've got exposure, contrast, saturation, shadows, and highlights. So similar to what you would have in Lightroom, but the difference is if you're going to do these things, especially if you're bringing it over from Lightroom, you're probably better to go ahead and do them in Lightroom, because then they'd be non-destructive. They'd be metadata adjustments. If I do them here, they're actually permanent adjustments to the photo. So I'm going to go ahead and I can bump up the exposure. Maybe about right there. I could also increase the contrast a little bit. It wouldn't hurt on this photo. Doesn't need any more saturation, doesn't need any more highlights, doesn't need any more shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. All right, so the next one, this is a different need for Liquify. This isn't, her face is fine, her face is proportional, there's nothing wrong with her eye. We can only see one eye anyway, so everything looks good. All right, so I see, just looking at the chat here. Okay, so, but you notice her vertebrae, her actual back and neck bones are kind of sticking out. And again, it's the angle, it's the lighting, it's all of the above that's making it probably more exaggerated than it really is. So this would be one of those cases where I'd use Liquify just to kind of smooth it out a little bit. Now, keep in mind, that as it goes down, that's just her other shoulder sticking back. That's not really her back, but right here, you see those two little bumps right on her neck. That's just vertebrae, and again, the angle and everything, the way it's positioned. So let's go to Liquify. And this is not a face Liquify, so there's not going to be any control points to worry about. In this case, we're going to just go ahead and just use the warp tool, and we can adjust the size of that. Pull it down. You usually want the brush to be about the size of whatever it is you're trying to push. So we're just going to push that over and push that in a little bit, just to make it look like it's continuous and not two bumps or two humps. And then sometimes you may need to go the other way. You may need to pull out in the middle just to smooth it out, to make it smoother and less obvious. And that's it. So again, the shoulder at the bottom I'm okay with. It was just that little bit of a bump or two bumps that made it look a little strange. So let's go ahead and click OK. And my blue lines are also just not highlighting the way they're supposed to, but we're not going to worry about it. Let's go to healing. And again, same thing here, where we can zoom in nice and close. We can maybe take out whatever that is, and if I don't like it, let me undo, do it one more time. If I don't like what the healing brush is doing, then I can go to patch and patch it. So if you don't like what the healing brush did to the texture, then use patch instead. All right, now the healing brush is also good for things like hair. So getting some of that hair off the eye. And I have to do this in stages, as you would mess up like I'm doing now. Let's go in a little tighter. And getting it off the eye is always tricky. So in that case, I might patch it instead. And same thing here, I'd probably patch that. Make it blend in with the rest of the eye. That looks okay as a heel. And same thing, I'll patch that. And blend it in nicely. Alright, so it takes that out of the eye. And now one of the things that that we take for granted is the paint feature that's also built into Photoshop Fix. But anyway, I'm just going to go and fix just a couple more hairs here. All right, a few stray hairs. Oh man, I got to get out of this. Okay, so this is going to be the last one on Fix because we're already a half hour in and I got more apps to show. But Photoshop Fix available on iPhone and iPad. So no reason to take that selfie and wish you could fix one little thing and you post it before fixing it, because you can fix it in Photoshop Fix. Okay, so we got the image healed. We click OK and see now I got a blue line under healing, but I don't have one under adjust or liquefy. Don't know why. Let's go in and go to paint. And now I think I know why those blue lines are there or not, but I'll test that theory later. All right, so under painting, you've got the ability to paint, pick a color, and restore. And you can also blend in. So if I want to pick a color, even though I like the purple that's there, I could pick, just to make it look different, we'll pick a nice blue color. You can also get your colors from your library. So for example, if I want that blue color, I can have it. And then I can actually change the color of parts of my photo. So this is where the pressure sensitivity definitely comes in handy. And if we want it to really come in and do a nice job, we can zoom in. And also working with the Apple Pencil makes this very easy to do and stay close to the edge as opposed to using your fingers. Because your finger, I'm going to guess, is not that accurate. Alright, I'm just going to grab a bigger brush just to really lay it on thick for a minute here. And then we'll come back and do the edges. Now, even her own red lipstick went off the edges there on her lips. But if for whatever reason you needed blue lipstick, you've got it now. So just holding down a little bit less gives me that pressure sensitivity close to the edge. even though I'm working with a huge brush. Alright, so this is not something I would normally do. This is really just showing how the paint feature works. But if you need to do something wild and crazy, thinking about changing the color of your hair, if you want to see it first in that crazy color, this would let you do it. And this was just for fun. Don't do this at home. All right. All right, just for fun. And yes, it does work on hair, but of course the hair is a different mid-tone, different highlight, so it's going to show up as a slightly different variation of that blue. So I can undo that and click OK. Now, keep in mind that is being saved as a layer. And if I'm correct, so those blue lines, I was wrong. Or at least I think I was. It's not that they're not showing up on things I did or didn't do. I think what they're doing is they're showing up on things that will be layers if I were to go ahead and take this into Photoshop. So healing would be a layer, paint would be a layer, crop would be a layer, but as I said, the adjustments would be destructive, and in this case, liquefy would be destructive. So that's why I think those are not showing up with the blue lines underneath. Now, at any given point, I could go ahead and send this over to Photoshop CC, and I could also send it back to Lightroom, and it would go to either one of those applications as a layered file. So we'll see, in fact, in the time that it takes to send that. I won't wait for it, but it will pop up whenever it gets over to my computer, and then we'll see what that looks like as a Photoshop file where I can go in and make more adjustments to it. All right, so that was Photoshop Fix. Next up is going to be Adobe Comp CC. So Adobe Comp CC is one of those applications that, in my opinion, has an identity crisis because, and here comes Photoshop, by the way, because it doesn't have a name that maps to a desktop app. Like Photoshop Fix goes with Photoshop. Illustrator Draw must go with Illustrator. Photoshop Sketch must go with Photoshop. So those are all, Lightroom Mobile must go with Lightroom. So those are all desktop apps that, mobile apps that have a name that ties to a desktop app. Comp, on the other hand, doesn't. So a lot of people don't even know what Comp is. And the reason it doesn't map directly to a desktop app is because it can be used with Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign. It does not have a specific desktop app that it's tied to. That's why it doesn't have just one name. Like, it's not InDesign Comp, because it can be used with Illustrator or Photoshop or InDesign. So let me switch back to this. That way you guys can see it. And so let's go to Comp. We'll fire up Comp. We'll wait for Comp to show up on the... This is why I didn't want Photoshop launching. There, see, Photoshop wants to show us this image. So it says, I'm going to take over until I'm finished. Let's see if it actually opens it. Yeah, I think Comp is pretty cool as well, Theater Geek, California, or CA. All right, it's bringing over this file from Photoshop Fix. And again, I don't really want to wait for it. So we'll wait for that to open in the background. Okay, so I've got Comp CC open, and as you can see, one of the things that's, well, it's open, so let's go ahead and look at it. If we go back and see, that's what I meant here. Here are the layers that came over. So that layer of paint didn't really destroy the photo. That layer of healing didn't really destroy the photo. So those are non-destructive edits that came over from Comp CC. And they come over as in a layer set or layer group called cropped edits, paint and heal. So things that were permanent are the liquefy and the adjustments. Those were permanent. And let me see if the crop is permanent. Hold on, let's check here. If I click on the crop, let's see if I can uncrop this. I think the crop is permanent. No, it's not. So those are the reasons why those had blue lines under them, because they're not permanent. Or they're coming over as layers. They're not destructive. Anything without the blue line under it is destructive, and therefore it didn't have the blue line under it. So that solves that mystery as to why certain things had it and certain things didn't. All right, so let's go back to our story. I'm going to go ahead and close this. I don't need it. Don't save. And let's go to back to QuickTime here. All right, so we got Comp CC open. And you notice the one thing it says right off the bat is now you can add multiple documents to projects. So one of the things that people were asking for in Comp was the ability to have multiple pages. And now you can get that effect with the multiple documents. The other thing that's new is, and this is something I've been wanting, you can now change your unit of measure. It was always points. Now you can choose pixels, inches, centimeters, millimeters, whatever you want. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a new comp, and this is also new, is that there are more presets. So you've got more for mobile, you've got more for print, you've got web, and now you've got a whole new social category as well. So if you're, again, we talked about this not being tied to any one app, but this is for doing layouts on your mobile device, whether it's an iPad or iPhone. And yes, CompCC is iOS only at this point. So, for example, if I need to lay out a Facebook banner, then I can see that, or cover photo, I can see that now there is one built in that's 851 pixels by 315 pixels, as opposed to under my formats where I had already created one, but I had no choice other than to use points. So all of these, all the social ones are new, and some of the other ones have additional ones like email for web, that's new. So you have new categories. So I'm going to go ahead and do a letter portrait. And once I bring that over, that just brings up the letter portrait, and now I can go ahead and start my design process. So my design process is basically, here, let me hide others. Just want to get that panel out of the side there. All right, so now that I've got the design, or the canvas open, my design process is basically, I can design a layout using freeform shapes or placeholders or frames that I can either use the layout that I could create here and save it and show it and export out a PDF and send it around, or I can send it back to the desktop like we saw Fix come over to Photoshop. This can go to Photoshop, Illustrator, or InDesign with all the layers and everything intact, completely editable. So for example, I've got this blank page open. One of the things I'm going to want on that blank page is an image that fills the page. So I'm going to make an image placeholder, just like that, just with my finger. I just drew a letter X, and that turned it into a placeholder. Now I can pick that placeholder up and move it around, and I can, of course, make it take up the whole 8.5 by 11 page. So now that I've got my image placeholder there, I'm going to deselect it, and I want another place, I just want another box at the bottom that I'm going to put a color in. So I just draw a rectangle. Oops, hold on. There we go. Draw a rectangle with my finger, and that converts it into a perfect rectangle. So now I can, of course, move that rectangle where I want it to be. Make it go out to the edge there, and maybe make it not go all the way to the bottom. So now I've got that placeholder. Now, of course, most layouts are probably going to include some text. So how do I make text in this app? I can go ahead and just drag my finger across. If I deselect first, there we go, and put a dot after it. When I put a dot after it, it knows to put in sample text. And of course, I can resize that frame any way I want. I can also increase the size of the type, which we'll get into that in just a minute. So I can make as many placeholders as I want for this particular layout. Now, if I want, let's say I want another photo below the type in the shape of a circle. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw the circle. Let's deselect that first. Draw the circle and put an X in it. And Comp will know to make that a placeholder as well. And of course, I can resize that, move it around, put it wherever I want, and that becomes my placeholder for my circle. Now, one of the things that's new, I'm going to go ahead and do it now so I don't forget, is the ability to have you see where it says add grid and guides? That was always there, or that was there for the last couple versions. But if you did add grids and guides, like so, I can tell it to add columns. And I can also move this around, by the way. So I can pull that down or pull it up. And this is basically just my layout. So if I want more columns, I add more columns. And then once I say I'm done, it will give me those column guides. Now, like I said, that's not new. What is new is that the column guides now, when you send it to the desktop, they go over too. Before, only the content would go over, the guides wouldn't. So that's another new capability in Comp CC. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and finish this up real quick so we can get to at least one more app before I have to switch over to the Lightroom stream. So let's go ahead and grab the placeholder for the image below. And now I put in all my placeholders. If you ever said, well, how do I know what draws what placeholder? You've always got drawing gesture guide help right there. So that will always be your guide to show you what gestures you can do to make what kinds of objects. So if you wanted a line, it's a line across and back. That will draw a straight line. You want to erase, just scribble through it. So those are all things that are built in. All right, so now that I've got the placeholder selected, I'm just going to grab my image. And I can bring my image in from my device, from Lightroom, from Creative Cloud, from the Marketplace. I'm going to grab one from Adobe Stock, one that I don't have yet. So I'm just going to grab one. I'm going to look for something that is, oh, I know what I want. No, I want sunflowers. And of course, you don't have to use Adobe Stock. You can use any images you have anywhere you have them. So let's see if there's one that I like better than another one. I kind of like this one. So I'm going to go ahead and save a preview of this image and save it to a library. So I'm not buying it, I'm just previewing it to say that I want to maybe use it, maybe not. So I can put it in whichever library I want. Let's put it in the Twitch library, even though I would normally save my Adobe Stock things to my Adobe Stock library. So that saves it in the Twitch library and then brings the preview into my layout. And there it is. So now I want to go ahead and deal with this text. So I'm going to double tap and I'm just going to type the word in all caps, summer. All right, so now I got my summer text. We can go ahead and put the keyboard away, go back to the text tool. I'm going to go ahead and center it in that frame. And I'm going to go ahead and make it much bigger. Now, I don't know how big I need to make it yet because I haven't chosen the font. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the type tool again. And notice I've got the ability to choose a font. And not just any fonts, not just fonts that are built into the app, but I've got the ability to go in and grab any of my open type fonts. I'm sorry, my typekit fonts as well. So for example, if I don't like any of these, oh, I may, hang on. So many fonts, so little time. Maybe Antique Olive Nord. We'll do that one. Yeah, that'll make a nice big, thick summer typeface. All right, so now I've changed that, and of course it made it too big. So let's go ahead and make the frame bigger. And then it's still too big, so we just bring the point size down a little bit. All right, so now we've got our summer word in there. And of course, I want to change the color. So I can grab the color wheel again. I can pick a different color and bring that in. Done. Hang on. Hold on. There we go. Color one more time. Ah, I didn't actually change it. There we go. If I want to use that color, I can. or I can pick any color in the spectrum. Maybe something more like that. And we'll say done. And now, of course, I can continue working. So if I want to change the color of this, I can. Change that to a nice, maybe darker green. Green. All right, and I also want to lower the opacity of that. So I can grab this and grab the opacity slider and drop the opacity down. So it supports transparency as well. Next and last but not least, we'll grab the circle and we'll go to our on my device or in my Lightroom library. So let's go to my Lightroom library, my files, photos from Lightroom, view collections, and I want to bring in something from my landscapes portfolio. I know which image I want. So we'll go portfolios, landscapes, and yeah, we'll bring in this image even though this is more a fall image, but we'll bring that one in. And okay, and it will drop that right into our frame and scale it down. Now, of course, if I want that bigger, it does the right thing. It keeps it proportional, and I can keep this nice and lined up with the smart guides. So I can keep going, keep adding more text, but that is just a quick look at Comp CC. Now again, I've got the ability to send that to InDesign on the desktop, send it to Photoshop, send it to Illustrator, share a PDF, which is new, or just save it as an image on my camera roll and use it on social media, use it anywhere I want. Now I haven't put the text down at the bottom that I really want. Here, let's do this one last thing real quick. We'll go ahead and drag a line out there, and we'll just type in our text. Coming to a location near you. Because in some cases, it's still cold in a lot of places, and it's nowhere near summer. So that's my joke for the day. Summer, it's coming soon to a location near you. All right, let's make that bigger. And we'll go ahead and center it. And of course, we can change the font real quick. Actually, you know what? We'll leave the font the same. You saw me change the font before. We'll just change the color. All right. That becomes my layout, ready to go. And if I want to continue working on it, send it to, in my case, InDesign on the desktop, and that will create an InDesign compatible file. And 80s yesterday, congratulations. That'll create an InDesign compatible file and sync it to Creative Cloud back down to my desktop, and then you'll see it fire up in InDesign if we wait for it long enough. I'm just waiting for it to say that it's sent, and the next app I will get ready. Actually, I don't have to wait for it to say it's sent. It's sent, but I'm going to go ahead and close Comp and get out of it, and I'm going to disconnect from my iPad and switch over to the iPhone. And all right, I've got the phone plugged in. Let's see if we can do this real quick. All right, it always takes 2 tries to do that for some reason.